So in a vibrant democracy, opposition is the lifeblood of accountability and progress. It serves as a crucial check on power, providing alternative policies, ideas, and leadership. But when opposition weakens, so too does the foundation of democracy itself. Unfortunately, in Nigeria today, we are witnessing a worrying trend, a dearth of strong, unified opposition, and the effects are rippling across the political landscape that is Nigeria. Let's take a closer look at two of the prominent opposition parties in recent years, the People's Democratic Party, PDP, and the Labour Party, LP. These parties have found themselves entangled in leadership crises that have weakened their capacity to effectively hold the ruling government to account. For the PDP, once Nigeria's ruling party for 16 years, the internal divisions have been glaring. The recent suspension of acting national chairman Umar Damagum further deepened the party's struggles. While the court intervened to maintain Damagum's position until a convention is held, the infighting within the party continues to cast doubt on its ability to function as a credible opposition. Factions, lawsuits, and even power struggles have reduced what was once a political giant to a fragmented entity, unable to project a clear voice or vision for our country, Nigeria. And then there's the Labour Party, which surged into prominence in 2023 behind the presidential candidacy of Peter Obi, the Obedience. It has also been hamstrung by leadership squabbles. Despite its rapid rise, the party is now embroiled in a bitter internal battle from one faction to the other, with two factions now vying for control. Labour Party, the question is, what is going on? A federal high court ruling in favor of Julius Abure's leadership is now being challenged by the party's other faction, which is led by Senator Nenadi Usman. Instead of building on the momentum from the last election, the general elections of 2023, the Labour Party too is stuck in a cycle of court cases and power plays, distracting from its potential, as we all thought it was, a change, a force for change. These crises have severe implications for Nigeria's political health. With weakened opposition, the ruling All Progressives Congress APC faces little effective challenge, allowing it to govern without any scrutiny. In fact, with minimal scrutiny, for being fair. The absence of a unified opposition means fewer platforms for alternative ideas, fewer debates on policies, and crucially, most importantly, fewer champions for the people when their rights are trampled upon. It makes you wonder, who else is hearing the voices of the people? Who else is fighting for the voices of the people? Is it social media influencers? Very dark man. I'll keep it moving. The leadership vacuum in opposition parties is not just about political or party politics. It's about the future of governance in Nigeria. When oppositions fall apart, citizens lose their voice in the political system. The principles of checks and balances are undetermined, and the government of the day is left to operate without the rigorous oversight that democracy demands. So, the question this morning is, can the PDP and the Labour Party rise above their internal conflicts? Can they rebuild and become the opposition forces that Nigeria so desperately needs? Or will their current state of disarray continue to leave Nigeria's political landscape lopsided, with all the power contributed or concentrated in one place? APC. Only time will tell. But for now, we can only hope that the opposition parties find its strength again, because in the absence of opposition, democracy itself is at risk. And so today on the show, on Breakfast Extra, we hope to answer those questions. We hope to find answers not just for our viewers, but also for the sake of accountability, because that's what the fourth realm is all about, isn't it, Mazzino?
Yes, indeed, and they've come to the right place if that's what they're looking for here on Breakfast Extra. Thank you for a very stellar prologue there, Judith.
I try my best. But anyway, a very good morning to you. Let's get started on Breakfast Extra, shall we? Join us. Let's seek answers together.
Good morning and welcome to Sunday edition here for Breakfast Extra. And like Judith said from before, it's going to be a very interesting show as we have so much to talk about here today, whether it's LP, PDP crisis or everything else. You're at the right place for a Sunday as we got started for the weekend since yesterday already. Judith, wow, answers you hope. Oh, I'm hoping for answers myself. There's so much to ask about Nigeria currently. It's like as if we don't know where this is, this place is. We woke up into the twilight zone, but then here we are trying to make sense of everything that happens each week and maybe put it in a platter for you digest format for a weekend, isn't it?
Oh yes, indeed. I mean, and I think now more than ever is a time for us to start to ask those questions because Nigerians are dissatisfied with the. I mean, look, if one of the former presidential candidate had to refer to the president as T-Pain, then you know that something is wrong somewhere.
As a way of reviewing everything that happened last week, I think one moment that captures exactly how Nigerians are feeling actually happened on News Central last week. If you guys didn't see, on Jassy Tulu, was she expressed exactly what every Nigerian is going through currently at the time. I don't know how I'm going to express that myself, but I know that I've been buying fuel for the past many days in different, for different reasons, and it's beginning to break my back.
It's beginning
It is breaking my back. I had to have a talk with my wife. You see all these going out with your friends?
Don't pay any mind to you, better go out.
If it's not making your money, maybe you should reconsider, or maybe you guys can carpool or something. I think with everything that's happening, we're going to have to start making rearrangements on how we actually live.
But, Mr. have we not been making rearrangements?
We're Nigerian. We always survive. We come up one way or the other.
Have we not been making rearrangements? When you think about it, we constantly have to always, resize and, find alternatives. I mean, from last year, I remember all the brands that I normally would buy that I had to look for a cheaper alternative, whether it's, cleaning utensils, whether it's a cleaning formula for my dishes or, whether it's skincare. I mean, my shower gel, for heaven's sakes, I constantly have to look for a cheaper alternative. It's like, when does it end? Oh my goodness.
Well, I'll tell you one. The alternatives you should look for should actually be the ones that work, that have been empirically tested. Do not go for, what do they call them again?
Don't do it.
Merchandises that you find in churches that are saying, this is holy water. And it can cure pimples. Don't do that.
No.
Because whether you like it or not, different industries are trying to adjust as well, and this is happening. I'm one of the few people who don't hold back from saying that I think that even the religious industry is also taking advantage of the suffering of Nigerians, and I find it very, very appalling that religion has become a place where people actually try to defraud other people. Sad.
Honestly, and it's at times like this that you always see the institutions who are supposed to aid the masses. They said they exploit the desperation of Nigerians. It's unbelievably sad, and hopefully we'll find a way to an end in all of this. Hopefully we find a way to an end in all of this.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do now. We're going to start today's show by, first off, Well, congratulating our weekend warrior. And we've got a very interesting weekend warrior for this weekend already. Let's tell. Now, for Weekend Warrior segment today, we shine a spotlight on remarkable efforts making differences, or people making differences in our world. And this week, guess what? We celebrate the voices advocating for the rights and empowerment of girls across Nigeria. And in commemoration of the 2024 International Day of the Girl Child, the She Forum Africa held an Adolescents Town Hall and Mentorship Day session right here, or rather, not right here, but in Nigeria. This was in Abuja, aimed at creating a platform for young girls to thrive. Our News Central's Joshua Imarai brings us more on this impactful event.
The event is organized to mark the 2024 International Day of the Girl Child by the She Forum Africa. The session saw the convergence of girls from the 6 area councils of the Federal Capital Territory. Girl Child advocates at the event called on government and relevant stakeholders to create an enabling environment by strengthening institutions to enable the girl child achieve their full potentials.
What we're saying is girls' dreams and aspirations are as much of a priority as that of the boys. Girls represent a key and central factor in growth and development processes, and so they have to be harnessed early, they have to be groomed early, they have to be supported early to reach their full potential.
We continue to make advocacies to government to create an enabling environment by strengthening institutions to accommodate you and your peculiarities. We will continue to tell the public to accept you and give you opportunities that are yours.
I think that if every sector in Nigeria actually focuses on investing on the girl child within and without her family, in her schools, in her communities, we end up investing in families, and we make sure that our female gender can contribute to the nation.
Others in attendance encouraged girls to aim for leadership positions and follow their aspirations.
Every girl is unique, and they should have a very safe and conducive environment to thrive and to realize their potentialities. Not even potentialities, their full potentialities as members of the society.
We want girls to have a vision to be anything that they want to be, and they can do it, and to also work towards it.
Advocates at the event say empowering Nigeria's girl child requires concerted effort to address systemic gaps in education, mentorship, and provision of adequate resources to foster an inclusive environment for growth. In Abuja for News Central, I am Joshua Imarai.
And so as we reflect on this significant day of the International Day of the Girl Child, I find myself thinking about the incredible potential of every girl in Nigeria. There's something truly profound in the dreams and aspirations that blossom within each and every one of us, of them. Dreams that deserve to be nurtured, supported, and celebrated. And so today, our Weekend Warrior isn't just a single figure. It's every girl who has dared to dream even in the face of unimaginable odds. It's every girl who sees beyond her circumstances and reaches for something greater, who knows she is destined for more. Whether it's fighting for her right to an education or simply daring to envision a future where her voice is valued, these girls are nothing short of extraordinary. There's something undeniably inspiring about the strength, resilience, and courage of all of our girls, really. They dream big, they fight for their place in a world that too often tries to push them aside, but they keep pushing forward, driven by a desire not only to survive, but to thrive. And we see this in the powerful voices of advocates who, exactly the report we just saw from Joshua Marai, that were gathered at the She Forum Africa Town Hall, calling for the right conditions for our girls to blossom into the leaders that they are destined to be. So today, we don't just celebrate what girls can become, we celebrate who they already are. They are strong, smart, bold, and beautiful. Every girl who has ever been told she couldn't but still did embodies the spirit of today's, or rather for this week, Weekend Warrior. When we talk about the future, it's impossible not to see the hope and the strength that lies within our young girls. And I am one of them as well. They are the future doctors, they are engineers, they are writers, they are artists and leaders who will shape this nation and our world at large. Their courage, their resilience, and their passion are the forces that will propel us forward. So, to every girl, young and old, and the ones that are young at heart like myself, and to every girl that is watching today, you are more powerful than you know. You carry within you the strength to overcome any circumstance or any obstacle, the creativity to chart your own course, the heart to change the world. Know that your voice matters. Your dreams are valid, and no matter the challenges that you face, you have the strength within you to rise above them. You are the architect of the future, the hope in a world that desperately needs your light. And to the mentors and advocates and parents who continue to stand beside these girls, lifting them up, nurturing them, and nurturing their dreams as well, empowering their voices, we also celebrate you today, and we salute you. Your work is changing lives, building a better tomorrow for every girl child in Nigeria. And this week's Weekend Warrior is also a reminder to us all that the future is not only bright, the future is female. So yes, to our girls, the dreamers, the fighters, the change makers, your journey is just beginning, and we are with you every step of the way. I should also share my own story, but there's enough time. There's not enough time for that. But again, to all of our girls, Mizuno is I'm a daddy's girl, and Mizuno has a daughter.
Yes, I do have a daughter, and
that's
a beautiful piece there. Once again, we got a double whammy from Judith this morning. A great prologue and then a Weekend Warrior session that sounds like something out of a motivational book. Fantastic.
Oh my gosh, Mizuno.
And I like that part where the future is female.
Yes.
Well, let me go a step further and make it, let's see. The future is hers. Boom. Thank you. Cut now. Let's go to the other. End on a high. That was the high.
But hey, you're watching a Breakfast Extra. We're going to show a break. When we come back on the other side, we get started properly with the show today. We've got so many questions and quite the lineup just for you. Stay with us. And you're welcome to back on the show. Now, our very first story, we dive into the ongoing leadership crisis within Nigeria's major opposition party, and that's the People's Democratic Party, following the suspension of acting national chairman Umar Damagum. Now, rumors have swirled that the party treasurer, Yayari Ahmed, has been appointed as his replacement. However, the PDP has swiftly moved to clarify the situation. News Center's Emmanuel Bogudu brings us the latest updates from the party's national secretariat in Abuja. Let's take a look.
The crisis in the People's Democratic Party has sure taken a turn for the worse following the suspension of the acting national chairman, Umar Damagum. As deputies, members of the National Executive Council replaced their superiors, their first press conference was to intimate citizens on events playing out in the party in a bid to set the records straight.
I would want us to have a working relationship, a very cordial one, like you have had with my predecessor. He is not gone yet, he's only on suspension. Like Ms. Chinwe said, within the period of 2 weeks within which he would have interfaced with the committee chaired by His Excellency Taufik Arapaja, he would have exonerated himself of the allegations leveled against him. It was said to be insubordination and disloyalty. Whatever that means, it will be cleared better in the days ahead as the committee meets with them. But I am here to report on duty, nature abhors vacuum. My humble self and my colleague seated right by my side have resumed in that capacity. I know you will agree with us that it's not important to give a day out. We are expected to resume almost immediately in line with the provision of the law and the directive of the National Working Committee.
The acting spokesman denied the party's involvement in the appointment of the new acting national chairman as replacement for the suspended chairman, Damagum. He provided details of what led to the suspension of the party's executives, saying the crisis in the party, unfortunately, is heating up the nation's polity.
I am sure you are guided by ethics of professional conduct. and the rule of engagement. Nobody will just wake up from the wrong side of their bed to begin to churn, narrative and then expect the enlightened members of the society to take it hook, line, and sinker. We are guided by rules of engagement. When Ms. Chinwe was making the background presentation, she did say at its 593rd session, the NWC sat in a formal quorum and gave the decision yesterday, suspending the duo. Now, I wouldn't know at what sitting, with what quorum, what number, who are the dignitaries that would have come with that kind of narrative. What I would have expected from members of the pen, given your revered standing in the society, is not to even entertain that kind of argument coming from people that have decided to go against decorum, rule of engagement, and decency.
The acting legal advisor of the party provided details of the legal implications of the current crisis in the party.
The deputy national chairman North is from the North. That's the current acting chairman, Damagu. So when the national chairman vacated office, so by the provisions of the constitution, he now assumed office as an acting chairman. And you cannot remove him, like when people go and make statements. He has to act until either you elect a new chairman by a convention. You know the provision of the law. You have to elect a new chairman who now assume office for him to now vacate that office. It has not been done. So people will now go and say Damagu must leave office. He has to be removed from the office. It's not the way, because we are not in a lawless society.
The PDP says that it will respect the recent court decision which mandates Damagun to be replaced by a valid convention. In Abuja, for News Central, I am Emmanuel Bagudu.
And now Emmanuel Bagudu is actually joining us from Abuja. I want to say thank you very much for that report, Emmanuel. Now, let's talk about the crisis in the PDP. It seems to be escalating quickly, and the public remains very eager to understand exactly what's next for one of Nigeria's biggest political parties. So, Emmanuel, if you don't mind, if you could take us through exactly what led up to the rumor, starting with perhaps maybe the suspension or even what happened from before there, Emmanuel.
Yeah, it's very important for us to also state that Damagun is not sacked. Damagun is suspended for 2 weeks. And very important for also to also state that the current leadership of the party, which is an acting capacity, made it clear that PDP is respecting the court order that says Damagun cannot be impeached except through a convention. So that's very, very important. So that it will be clear. So all they are saying is that all their leadership workings right now is on acting capacity, and that Damagun is being suspended for insubordination and some kind of anti-party activities or disloyalty, as they said. But of course, you remember 2 months ago, a disciplinary committee of the party was set, which was headed by Chief Tommy Kimi, and Chief Tommy Kimi's table now is full of petitions. Was that of the allegations against Damagun, which is, of course, insubordination and disloyalty, and that was what led to his suspension. So, for the next 2 weeks, it is expected that the Chief Tommy Kimi's committee will be working very, very hard to actually find out what really happened, what are the evidences, what are the issues, what crime did, what offense did Damagun and his like committed before they can actually pass a judgment or rather a ruling about their standing in the party. And don't forget, the party said they are going to have a convention in December. That is when they are going to have a substantive leader. So for now, it's it should be clear that it's just a suspension and it's a temporary one. And it's said that they are going to give the public much details of what they found out, whether Damagun did something wrong or not. And then, of course, we try to ask them what was the particular issue of insubordination and disloyalty that Damagun committed. They only try to mention 1 or 2 things about the Rivers local government election. You will recall that the PDP in Rivers State said they are not going to participate in the local government election. And you also recall that there was a statement that Damagun gave directives for the PDP to go ahead and participate in the election, contrary to what the majority of the members of the People Democratic Party are saying. So those are just a few things they tried to mention to us, and they said they are going to give us more details in the coming weeks. Yeah.
Speaking of more details in coming weeks, we're being joined now by Mr. Umar Sani. He is the former special advisor on media and publicity to the former Vice President Namadi Sambo. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Issa. I appreciate you for doing this with us. We're going to bring you into this conversation. I think it's important to have a very rounded view in terms of 360. You've heard from our reporter here, correspondent Emmanuel Bagudu, who was live at the PDP Secretariat covering the entire story as it broke. What would your response be in regard to the root cause of this issue, and more specifically, the suspension of Umar Damagum?
Well, as you can see, initially the PDP was going on well and there was no problem. But now so many contending issues have arisen as to how long can somebody serve in an acting capacity? What is the constitutional provision of our party as to how long will somebody be acting? And what will be the position of his own position if he remains in an acting capacity? If he's an acting national chairman, now we are missing one position, which he was elected, which is the deputy national chairman of the party. So how do we now put this thing in proper perspective? These are the root cause of all these problems. The issue now is Damagum going to act? Does the Constitution give him the power to act until a national convention is convened? Or is there any provision in the Constitution that circumvents that part of his acting capacity and gives a solution as to what will happen? Yes, there is. Section 47, subsection 6 of our Constitution is very clear. If there a vacancy exists in any of the three steps, we have the ward, the local government, the zonal, all these, if a vacancy exists, and before an election, the committee at that level, the executive committee at that level can appoint somebody to hold that position pending either a Congress or a national convention. And this is where the problem lies. There is an attempt to appoint somebody from the North Central, which is part of the history of our party. It has happened when Bamanga Tukur was national chairman. When he resigned, Adamu Maazu from the Northeast, Adamu Maazu from the Northeast also took over. And when Adamu Maazu left, Alimodu Sharif, still from the Northeast, took over. So it's a constitutional provision within our party, and it's a hierarchy that we have been doing. So if Ayu resigns, the next person that will come should come from North Central. And it is Alimodu Sharif was done through appointment. Bamanga Tukur came in through election, but Adamu Maazu came through appointment. And after the appointment, he was further confirmed at a convention. After Adamu Maazu, Alimodu Sharif came by appointment. And after the appointment, he was confirmed at a convention. So there is nothing that makes it different now for the party to appoint somebody as the substantive national chairman from the North Central. And then at a later date, we do a mini convention to ratify that appointment. This is the process, and that is the procedure. People have argued that Section 45, subsection 2, has stated that you have to be by election. But it says, that section is very clear. It says, without prejudice to Section 47, subsection 6 of the Constitution. So there has to be an appointment. Somebody must be there because there cannot be a vacuum. That can be ratified later. Even the National Working Committee, some of the decisions they take the decisions on behalf of the National Executive Committee of the party. And it is when we come to NEC that that decision is ratified. As far as the issue is concerned, the advocates are now advocating that that provision must be complied with. And that
Mr.
is
Sani,
why, yeah.
Now, sir, it's very obvious that your faction of the PDP actually is hungry for some sort of change in power when it comes to this subject now. And it makes for the question, who exactly are you expecting to take over that position? There has been talks or whispers in the wind of Governor Philip Salau being groomed as a successor. So my question is, why does your faction of the PDP insist that there is need for a change right now? Regarding the vacuum that you spoke about, I hear you on that one, but why specifically Governor Philip Salau as the successor?
Let me first and foremost clarify that I'm a member of the PDP and I do not belong to any faction. I'm only giving you the analysis of what is happening within the party. I do not believe that there is any faction in PDP, and I believe that what is happening now is something that can be surmountable, and that we will use our internal mechanism to be able to resolve it. Secondly, there are so many aspirants to the position. It is not only Philip Shaibu that is looking for it. We have heard about David Mark, former Senate President. We have heard about our governorship candidate in Nasarawa State. And quite a lot of people are looking for it. So it is left for the North Central stakeholders to meet and pick one and then present that person to NEC. Now NEC will ratify that person as somebody a choice. Then he will now start acting pending when a mini national convention is convened to confirm him. That is the process. And so selecting one individual and saying that that is the person that is being groomed is not entirely correct.
Now, let me come back to Emmanuel there and ask about, just being at that press briefing, there was a lot of conversation about, the legal procedure. Just besides a conflicting, method of appointing or electing a new leadership, what other conflicts was addressed during the briefing?
Yes, yeah. Actually, most of the conflicts that have been raised during that briefing was the main offense. What is the specific offense that Damagum committed? That was what journalists were interested in knowing. And of course, why will we have a Yayari being appointed? Because we raised it. In fact, that happened. Yayari, the treasurer, was allegedly appointed as the acting chairman of the PDP while that briefing was ongoing. And journalists, put up the question to the acting national public secretary, Manga, who denied the story, who said the story, who told us that the story should be discountenanced. So that's number one conflict. The second conflict is to find out what really was the offense. What happens after 2 weeks? After 2 weeks, and then of course, substantial information is not gotten. Will Damagum continue to be on suspension? Those are the issues that were raised. Then, of course, the legal advisor actually, brought in the issue of zoning, where he said that whenever issues like that come up, if at the end of 2 weeks they actually found out substantial evidence about the offense that Damagum and his cohort committed, they actually is going to be sacked. And then, of course, someone from the north will take over. But it did not specify whether it is from the North Central or just mentioned it from the North. Now, one of the issues they make is that they don't want to know. They said they are not in the party, according to what the legal advisor said. They don't give, once it is either North or South or East. That's just what they say. They don't specify whether it's North Central or, Northeast or Northwest. So those are the issues that were raised. They promised that they're going to, investigate the offense that Damagum committed. And then after 2 weeks, they are going to make it public. But for now, he remains suspended. And then the main issue there is the fact that whether there's a faction. Thank God, one of the PDP stakeholders here with us, he made it clear that there's no any faction. They also made it clear that there's no faction yet. There is no any faction because it's not the issue. It's not the issue of the Alumni Sheriff or McCarthy issue where a chairman was fired and then another chairman has been inaugurated. No, this is a different issue entirely. It's just an internal party squabble, which is they said is very, very expected in a party like the PDP. So it's just something that they are trying to put their party together ahead of coming elections. So according to them, it's a simple fracas that will be resolved in coming weeks, right. And that they are going to respect the court order that says Damagum remains chairman. They said it clear. Damagum remains chairman, but suspended chairman, and it can only be replaced through a convention. Yeah.
Now, Emmanuel, thank you so much. Replacing during a convention, Mr. Sani, a convention is a year away. It's not going to happen until 2025. What does this mean for the leadership of PDP for now, especially at a crucial time like this in our socio-economic space and just the state of the nation in its entirety?
You see, like I earlier said, although the court order is an ex parte order that was given, which gives room for the order to be challenged, it is not a judgment of the court. It is important for us to state very clearly that an order can be challenged because it does not really portray the intent of our Constitution. The Constitution says we can appoint and later, confirm. That's by election. Election comes in different ways, and so if we appoint, is an election because the election was done by the stakeholders of that zone and then was confirmed by NEC, which is the highest decision-making body of our party, and then the National Convention, which is the overall decision-making body. Then it becomes, so it is not until 2025 a person can be chosen and be confirmed and then by ratified at a mini convention. Then in 2025, it is the end of the tenure of this National Working Committee, and so new set of National Working Committee members can now be elected.
Mr. Umar.
But for the court to determine that until 2025, that is delving into the internal affairs of the party, and which the Supreme Court in subsequent and plethora of cases have frowned against courts delving into the internal affairs of political parties.
Mr. Omar Sani, I please need some clarification here because the process that you have just described is actually one of selection, not one of election. If you're going to select, as you say, appoint an individual and then wait for a year for him to be confirmed, it goes against the constitution of the party when you look at it from what the Constitution states. You need a quorum, you need an election to happen. So if you could please explain that once again, because I find it very difficult to understand.
Our Constitution is very clear. It uses the word appoint. Section 47, subsection 6, uses the word appoint. So once you are appointed, then you can be ratified. And when you are ratified, it means you are elected. Ratification is an election. If you go to an election and you don't have a contestant, somebody contesting with you, what we do is we ratify you and you become the substantive person. It is when somebody is contesting with you, somebody comes in to say, okay, I'm also filing my documents to contest with you. That is when you now begin to count votes. But when there are no votes, you are ratified and then you move on. So it's still it's a way of an election.
Now, Mr. Sani, one of the things that Emmanuel said when he was giving his account of covering the briefing was about the allegations levied against Damagum's leadership, saying that he had not been effective, there had been anti-party activities, and just a general dissatisfaction with his leadership. And so I have to ask you, if you were to score his leadership being appointed acting chairman of the party up until all of the issues going on in River State until this very point, do you think it has been effective? And should the giving the court ruling and his suspension, is that enough for him to steer into a better direction for his leadership of the party?
Well, Julie, let me tell you that the issue is not whether Damagum is performing or not, but that his loyalty is skewed. That is the arguments within the party. That there are so many contending issues. There are various interest groups within the party, but most of these interest groups believe that Damagum is more loyal to one particular interest group against the remaining interest groups. You can see, that the three major contending interest groups at the moment are the Yeson Wike faction, the Atiku faction, and of course, now the Governors Forum, headed by Bala Mohammed. So
with those three factions that you just mentioned, is there still faction in the party, sir?
Yeah, because you said there wasn't faction.
These are contending interests. I'm only telling you the contending interest within the party. Yes, when people are contending, Bala Mohammed wants to contest election for president, so he is now mobilizing the Governors Forum to serve as a pressure group to do certain things in the interest of the Governors Forum, and of course, perhaps, which he can derive some comfort from, maybe much later. Then the Yeson Wike faction is also protecting his own interest, his interest in Rivers State, and of course, his interest as to destabilize our party, so that because he has already clearly stated that in 2027, he is going with he is standing on a mandate, and that mandate is the mandate of Tinubu. So he is going to support Tinubu in 20. So any candidate that comes out in PDP, he will not get his support. So the best thing for him is to destabilize the party. The Atiku is also contending because perhaps he has an interest in contesting in 2027, and he believes that these two contending interests are an impediment to his own contest. So these things have now brewed up to create what we have now. So the issue of Damagum is that people believe that he is not being very fair to all the contending groups. So the two other contending groups are fighting him. That is the issue.
Now, Emmanuel, before we let you go, because we're pretty much almost out of time here, finally, what was your takeaway from that briefing? Just being at the briefing, I'm going to ask you to remove your hat as a journalist and, as a reporter who's on the field, but now your heart as a Nigerian, sitting down there and just covering and watching how the event unfolded. What was your major takeaway from that press briefing?
Yes, my major takeaway is just one. I wanted to mention it, but I was actually waiting for the PDP chieftain here to help me so that they don't come for my neck. My major takeaway is the fact that there's a faction currently at the PDP. And then Damagum belongs to one particular faction, which is not fair. That is just the takeaway. Because the PDP chieftain with us here mentioned that he's not supposed to belong to one faction. He's supposed to be for everybody. He's supposed to be for everybody and for nobody, party in particular. So that's my major takeaway. That whoever is going to be saddled with the responsibility of being the party chairman, the PDP, must, attend to the needs of the three different factions in the PDP, if at all there is any. So, of course, even in the ordinary classroom, there are cliques, whether we like it or not. So, of course, my major takeaway is that Damagum, wasn't fair to the three contending factions, the Atiku, Wike, and of course the Governors Forum. Then, of course, we asked a very simple question. A simple question was asked to the officials of the PDP, that is Nelson Wike still a member of the PDP, and they refused to answer. So that makes it clear that that issue must be nipped in the bud if they actually want to contend with other parties in Nigeria. Thank you.
Emmanuel, your response really just forms the basis for my next question, and I'm going to ask this one directed to Mr. Sani. Mr. Sani, you've heard Emmanuel's takeaway from it. As an average Nigerian who just wants a stronger opposition against the ruling class, what would be your response to all of what his statement?
Well, his statement is not far from the truth. I think it was an extract from my own statement. He was only merely putting more flesh to my statement, which I have made. And let me also be very clear. All these conflicts that you are seeing, there are so many illegalities built on so many illegalities that has, snowballed. That is why the thing is gaining momentum. For instance, this official spokesperson of the party is Olonraga. He is the official spokesperson. If you suspend him, you cannot use a director who is a staff of the party to issue a statement. That is very wrong, Then if you appoint, if you say the deputy national public secretary should come and act, he is not privy to the NEC meeting that took place, that took that decision, because he is not a member. All deputies are not members of the NWC. The only deputy that is member of NWC is the deputy national secretary. So how could he be speaking on something that he was not privy to? These are the issues. So what happened there is only left for those people who were inside there. And the national public secretary is a member. The national legal advisor is a member. The deputy national legal advisor is not a member. So, but they are the ones now talking about the matter. So many confusion is coming in. They are now saying which 23rd meeting, which 500. So these are not the issues. The issues is you are not even part of the meeting. How can you be talking about something that happened in a meeting that you are not part of? It's somebody that is briefing you. So as far as it is, as far as I'm concerned, what Debo said has to be taken because he is the official spokesperson. If he says there is Damagun and Anyanwu has been suspended, the only people who can come out to challenge him is the deputy national secretary, deputy national chairman, South Arapaja, national secretary, and the national chairman. These are the three people that can say what you said is wrong. But any other person who is saying what he said is wrong cannot be above him because he is the official spokesperson. He is the only person authorized to speak on behalf of the party.
All right, sir. I want to say thank you very much, Mr. Marstani, and also thank you very much, Emmanuel Bagudu, for joining us to have this conversation this morning. To our viewers, would like you to please do stay because coming up we have the news with Judith Atibi.
And you're watching Breakfast Headlines on Breakfast Extra. I am Judith Atibi. The headlines at this hour. The chairman of the Plateau State Independent Electoral Commission, Planjik Sishak, has condemned in strong terms what he termed as abduction of an ad hoc staff of his commission while on official duty. Wesham Osia was on electoral duties in Mangu local government area during the October 9th, 2024 local council election when he was whisked away by unknown people before he was rescued by a team of combined security forces 48 hours after. News Central's Chizoba Anyonwe tells us more.
The 2024 local government election in Plateau State has come and gone with its pros and cons. Apart from voter apathy, as reported in some quarters, one other sad incident was what stakeholders termed as the abduction of a Plasiek ad hoc staff while on duty in Mangu Council area. Chairman of Plasiek did not mince words while condemning the act, insisting the miscreants will face the full wrath of the law.
I am going to take this thing very personal. You cannot abduct the life of a Plateau man and keep him for 48 hours because of election. And in that respect, that those polling units that felt that they cannot even listen to security will not allow that to happen. Elections have to be repeated in those three places to ensure, and whatever maximum support we'll get from security, we must get it from that to ensure that the proper thing is done.
The ad hoc staff, who settled for what he didn't bargain for on the election day, narrated his ordeal in the hands of his abductors. He was whisked away, forced to collate results of the wards, which wasn't his responsibility.
Every attempt to intervene, myself was not allowed to move. He was not there trying to reach out to my CEO. There were network challenges and other things like that. So the security came, I think, at different times, trying to intervene, but I was not allowed to be moved. I used the initial permission he granted via text, and I was able to do the collation and finish up the election process so that I can be free of that place.
Commander of Operation Rainbow, who doubles as special advisor to the governor on security, commended the cooperation of security agencies and that of PLASIEC in ensuring the safety and release of the ad hoc staff.
After 48 hours, as far as we're concerned, it became a case of abduction, because the law has various channels for you to, seek redress if you are not satisfied with an election, not to hold someone hostage. And that's why we took the steps that we took, So it was a combined effort of all the security agencies, the military, the police, the civil defense, and Operation Rainbow, to get him out.
How this incident ends, most likely as a deterrent to other lawbreakers, is what the people of Plateau State look forward to seeing. In Jos for News Central, Chizoba Anyonwe.
The recent hike in fuel price, presidential candidate, and now to the recent hike in fuel price. The presidential candidate of the Labour Party in 2023, Peter Obi, says it is extreme of President Bola Tinubu to allow an increase in the price of petrol while he is vacationing in comfort. Tinubu is currently on his annual vacation in Europe. Now, in a post on X, Obi said he praised Tinubu acts in the best interest of the citizens before returning to the country because many Nigerians are living under unnecessarily precarious conditions. On October 9th, the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited increased the price of petrol across its retail outlets nationwide. And in the meantime, the president of the Nigeria Labour Congress, Joe Ajaero, says the recent petrol price hike is harmful to the 70,000 naira minimum wage recently approved for workers. In an interview with journalists, Ajaero said the organs of the Labour Union will meet next week to decide their line of action on the petrol price hike. Recall that in July, President Bola Tinubu signed the minimum wage bill, increasing the workers' pay package from 30,000 naira to 70,000 naira into law. The price of petrol was around 700 naira per litre when the minimum wage bill was signed into law. In more into corruption development, a whistleblowing coalition, the Coalition of Anti-Corruption Civil Society Organizations for Development, has raised an alarm over alleged misappropriation of funds ongoing in the nation's Ministry of Niger Delta Development. Now, the group, while calling on the federal government, it called on the federal government and the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission to verify the claims, investigate the permanent secretary of the ministry, and bring to book those complicit in the allegations.
Amongst the countless infractions committed include non-execution/diversion of 30 million naira for medical outreach of staff of the Ministry of Niger Delta Development. It was not done. Non-execution/diversion of 21 million for skills development seminar in Akoko, Edo State. Non-execution/diversion of 19.3 million for skills development in Ilaje, local area of Ondo State. Diversion of 342 million for extra budgetary allocation proposed for rice palliatives. Misappropriations like diversion of 15 billion naira flood palliative for Niger Delta region. Most alarming recently is this diversion of 342 million for extra budgetary allocation, proposed allegedly for rice palliative for Niger Delta. While there are no budgetary provisions for procurement of bags of rice, in the 2023 budget, we are aware that on the 22nd of May 2024, the Permanent Secretary gave instructions for 5 departments to raise a total sum of 342 million naira. The departments are Infrastructure Development, Economic and Empowerment Department, Community Development and Education Department, Urban and Housing Department, and Environment Management Department.
As drama in Nigeria's National Petroleum Company Limited, as some members of staff of the company accused the Chief Human Resources Executive of using a position to disobey a valid court order. Now, this is related to a leadership crisis within the staff multi-purpose cooperative society, where the FCT High Court in Maitama, Abuja, sacked the executives of the society several years ago. The staff are accusing the HR executive of allowing her choice management committee to conduct an election of new executives into the society, a decision barred by the court in 2020.
The Chief Human Resources Officer of the NNPC Limited, Fatima S. Nyakubu, has been using her privileged position to undermine the order of the court, undermine the authority of the court. Ordinarily, this person's restraint ordinarily would have been a bit what's called apprehensive of the consequences of the order. But this particular woman, using her privileged position, like I said, has been the one fueling everything. They have gone ahead to conduct this election. And this election of the management committee couldn't have been made possible except the woman, the head of human resources, Chief Human Resources Officer of the NNPC, Fatima S. Nyakubu, except it wouldn't be possible for the fact that she gave them the portal of NNPC Limited to use, to communicate, and then ensure that the election was held, and then electing new management committee of the cooperative, when the order of the court is still pending and subsisting. And now, even as lawyers, we also know that for the fact that a matter is pending in court, it is typically expressed as least pending. That when a matter is pending in court, no party to the proceedings should do anything that will force a fait accompli. That's like making the order of the court that he would have made at the end of the matter nugatory.
And now to health matters. The International Red Cross, the Red Crescent Movement, the Norwegian Red Cross and the Nigerian Red Cross Society have tasked humanitarian service providers in the country to engage with the 36 state governments to ensure that they pay more attention to the outbreak of infectious diseases. Now, this was during a capacity building training of health professionals in Abuja on mpox surveillance, case management, infection prevention and control, as well as risks, communication and community engagement.
We can draw the attention of government in one manner or the other to ensure that government is able to respond the way we are supposed to do. Where we are now, the situation, like we have had some experiences with Ebola, Lassa fever, and some other pandemics, we are now seeing from scientific reports that most of these diseases are now manipulating their existence to give us another face which has to be addressed. And so we need all of us there to be innovative.
COVID started some time ago. At some point, we thought it was going away. It was already gone, maybe. But we realized that the strains started changing, metamorphosing into different levels, and it became a bit deadly and more difficult to contain. I hope we will not actually go into that kind of situation. We will not reach that kind of situation. We need to scale up.
And now to the east of the continent. Intercommunal clashes in southeastern Kenya have killed at least 18 people in the past 2 weeks, police said on Saturday, as security was boosted in the affected areas. Interior Minister Kithure Kindiki declared 12 areas of Tana River County dangerous and disturbed due to the clashes which have pitted communities of pastoralists against resettled flood victims. Kenya's National Police Chief Douglas Kanja ordered residents to surrender their firearms so that they could prevent a further escalation of violence. The fighting, which has been most severe in the town of Bura, began when the county government offered land to rehome people displaced by flooding on the banks of Tana River, the longest in Kenya. The government of Namibia has sought the help of Nigeria's Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission and the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission in its fight against corruption in the country. Now, this was just as it declared that because Nigeria is leading in the fight against corruption in Africa, it needs to share its remarkable achievements in fighting corruption. According to a statement cited on the Commission's website on Saturday, the partnership is aimed at exploring training opportunities as well as sharing of expertise with personnel of the Namibian Anti-Corruption Commission in the fight against corruption. And that's all at this hour. We get back now to more on Breakfast Extra. I'm Judith at TV. Stay here.
Welcome again. It's another big story where we tackle the major issues shaping Nigerian political landscape. Today, we're focusing on a significant legal ruling that has shaken one of Nigeria's most prominent political parties, the Labour Party. Now, on Wednesday, October 8th, the Federal High Court in Abuja ruled in favor of Julius Abure, reaffirming his leadership of the Labour Party. Now, this decision granted him full rights and privileges as the party's national chairman, while also compelling INEC to recognize his leadership. While Abure calls this a victory for democracy, not everyone within the Labour Party shares that view. Presidential candidate Peter Obi, Governor Alex Otti, and the caretaker committee led by Senator Nenadi Usman have resolved to appeal the judgment.
And so with the Labour Party split into two factions, we aim to understand what next for the party as it navigates this leadership struggle. So joining me, or rather joining us now, are two key figures. We'll first of all start with, we're supposed to have Mr. Abayomi Arabambi, who represents the Abure's camp, but also is a member of the Labour Party. Unfortunately, we can't seem to get a hold of him, but we're now being joined by Kennedy Ahanotu. He's a national youth leader, Labour Party. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Kennedy. We appreciate you for doing this with us, and good morning to you. Well, let's start, right? The court ruling
Thank
has
you.
now...
Good morning.
Good morning. The court ruling has now reaffirmed Julius Abure as the legitimate national chairman of the Labour Party. How has been, the response within the party? Was this what the party was hoping for in terms of the ruling?
Well, members of the party have accepted that with happiness and joy. Ab initio, there is no crisis in the Labour Party. It's just that people feel that the party is open for grab and is open for anybody to be its leader. What actually happened was that Abure emerged as the leader of the party in a convention held in Nnewi, and that convention was held within the existing tenure of Julius Abure. So after the convention, on July 2024, INEC started giving a body language to the party, which I felt that leaders of the party should have asked questions. I felt that leaders of the party should have gone to INEC for a correspondent exchange. There should have been an exchange of letters. INEC, please, why are you embarrassing our party? Why did you embarrass our national chairman in certain meeting? And writing INEC and receiving a reply from INEC, but what some of our leaders kept doing was to be believing the projections and maybe some kind of concocted stories that is being distributed around the media by some people who felt they don't like Julius Abure. And now, the law is law. Party administration and management is different from governance and country management or state management. If you don't know party management, you don't know it. And it's something that you have to grow in. It's not something that you just jump in. For example, what happened in Umuahia wouldn't have happened ordinarily, because what I expected the party to do is to approach the court for interpretation of what INEC is trying to do. Having known that there were a lot of petitions against the party, there were a lot of crises. You saw Apapa crisis, you saw the NLC crisis, you saw the Callistus crisis. All these were heaped on INEC. So even ordinarily, I expected INEC to keep quiet and look at the party and see what is going on, which they did. But many leaders misinterpreted that and felt there is a leadership vacuum. There has never been a leadership vacuum in Labour Party. The party has one national chairman who is Barrister Julius Abure. So for me, the court judgment is nothing new from what I already know, because I didn't expect the court to rule something contrary. Assuming the convention held after the tenure of Julius Abure, that would have been another case for judgment. But now, Julius Abure, in his own time as the national chairman, serving out a tenure, conducted a convention in March, and his tenure, as people are speculating on the media, expired on June. So what now happened to that convention held in Nnewi on March? This is the crux of the matter. So a lot of people felt that Julius Abure have done what he wants to do in Nnewi and that should not start. But by law, Julius Abure did not default the Electoral Act, Julius Abure did not default the party constitution, and Julius Abure did not default the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So the judgment a few days ago is justice to democracy, like me, I perceive it and I see it.
So Mr. Hanasu, now Alex Oti and also party principal Peter Obi have announced that they're going to be challenging this in court. How do you think this is going to affect the party, considering it's already fractioned state as it is, and why do you think this is necessary?
I felt that, like you said, fractionalizing the party was deliberate, because I kept saying till now, and I can say it on TV, that if His Excellency, our only governor, the pride of the party, can produce a correspondence he had with INEC before he took that decision, I will resign my position as a national leader. If he can produce a correspondence that INEC wrote him and told him that the party lacks leadership, I would resign even from partisan politics. You see, I feel at that level, leaders should not work based on speculation. Leaders should not work based on stories told them by some group of persons. Leaders should work with a tangible, concrete information. So I feel appealing the matter is now contrary to what they said in Umuahia. Because what they said is that they want to salvage a situation whereby the party is lacking in leadership. But when the court have now given the party, they have given directive to INEC to accord the party their due right and respect. If you appeal it, it means that what people are thinking, that there is going to be people that want to hijack the party, is true. Because this matter was already in court even before the Umuahia meeting. So if I were His Excellency Dr. Alex Oti, I would have waited till now before I constitute that caretaker committee, assuming the court have found the NWC led by Abure wanting and denied them approval to be recognized by INEC. It would have been valid now for His Excellency Dr. Alex Oti to take that action. Everybody is entitled to his own opinion, and His Excellency Dr. Alex Oti and the purported caretaker committee chairperson is free to approach the court. But I wonder how you will be approaching the court in a matter where you were not born. It's just like a child that is born now challenging the process of his birth. You see, it's only in Nigeria that some of these things happen. You have not been commissioned as a caretaker committee chairperson, and now the court have ruled on a case where the party is dragging their leadership before you were commissioned, and now you want to come and appeal that case. Is it not ridiculous? It is ridiculous. And again, what is your status? What is the locus with which this lady will appeal the court? We appeal the judgment. Are you appealing the judgment as in it caused some damages to you? It's already committing what we call contempt of court, because any matter that is in court, you are not supposed to do anything until that matter is adjudged. But now the matter was in court. This lady went ahead to be commissioned as a caretaker committee. He has violated some laws of the land by going forward to present herself to be anointed as caretaker committee chairman. That is now becoming injurious to the party. So instead of her to toe the path of peace, a part of reconciliation, and a part of unity, because I feel that Labour Party is not actually the problem of Nigerians right now. The problem of Nigerians are many: hunger, hike in price, fuel price, hike in electricity price, no medical care. These are the problems of Nigeria, and I feel that Democrats like us should come together and sit down on a table. That is one thing that is lacking in all this crisis. There has never been any time. Alex Otti have never called NWC generally to sit down with them and say, what do we do at this point? And that is a failure as far as I'm concerned in terms of his approach to leadership. And I don't care how anybody feel about it. Most times they don't allow us to come on air to speak. And a lot of people will come on air and throw many lies on us, and throw many lies on people like me, and say all manner of things, corrupt people, criminals, and all what have you. But this matter of leadership is being solved. And any good thinking member of the party should come into the party, and let's sit down and chart a forward course for the party. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Mr. Hannatu. One other thing is, from the past, the Labour Party was seen as a beacon of hope, especially for young people. But currently, you mentioned a few of the issues that they've been through: the NLC issue, the INEC issue, the Umuahia Convention. There's so many. It seems like as if it's like eating itself from the inside. Now, if Alex Otti and the party principal, former principal, Peter Obi, do continue with what they've announced to take this to court, how do you think this is going to affect the public perception of the LP, which is already fragile?
One thing that we have failed to do in this part of the world is to reject public perception and follow law. Public perception can tell you that your wife is something else. That's public perception. It is your choice to believe that your wife is something else. Public perception can tell you that your brother is the cause of your failure in business. It is your choice to believe in that. But as for party management and administration, it does with documented information, it does with exchange of communications, it does with decisions made on a round table. So my principal, I still respect him. Of course, he's coming to Labour Party, have made people like me to be heard politically across the world. So I cannot dispute the fact that His Excellency Mr. Peter Obi is leader of the party, and he has played a vital role in making Labour Party prominent. But that nevertheless, in this part of the world, we must submit ourselves, no matter how big and highly placed we are, we must submit ourselves to institutional development. We are where we are in Nigeria today because individuals feel too big than an institution. And for an institution to work, individuals must come together and sit down, not to act on public perception. Public perception is not law. Of course, when you go to a law court, you can't get judgment based on public perception.
I beg to differ.
You can only get judgment based on what evidences you have.
But when you look at it, Mr. Hannatu, public perception is what votes are determined by. If a party or if a person doesn't have a clear picture of what a party is about, they perceive it as, oh, I'm not with this party, and that affects the vote. So if you say public perception is not something to go by...
Public perception is an ingredient of the media. Public perception, if you bring me now and make me look good on the media will buy me. People will buy me. Public perception is a projection on the media. Look at what happened on Twitter sometime in the past, even though the guy has been arrested and is in custody. Somebody came on the Twitter and said that they gave me 2 million in Edo State to mess up Edo primary, which never happened. And more than 1 million people viewed it and rained curses on me, on my personality. I never saw the 2 million, nothing like that happened. But public perception is that Kennedy is a criminal. Will you now take me to court and imprison me without investigating such thing? So public perception is a creation of the media. The same way the media projected that the Julius Abure NWC are criminals, if the media turns today and say that there is peace in Labour Party, if leaders of the party come on air today and say the party is one, we are working together, public perception will also change.
Kennedy.
Public perception changes with time.
Kennedy, I take objection to saying that the media is the sole cause or the root cause or the manufacturers of public perception. Now, we may be, to an extent, aid in public perception, but if a person forms an opinion of you, there's not so much the media can do. That's number one. I think there's a difference between social media and traditional media, and I think when you cited your case, that is social media in its entirety. And I think that the media is working tirelessly, hence why we're having a discussion like this, to talk about disinformation and misinformation and understand what is clear when it comes to matters like this. And we have to bring matters to the fore to have those discussions as clear as possible and be as very objective as we can. So which takes me to my next question, right? You talked about the lead up to the court ruling that has now affirmed Abure. Now, the persons, the chieftains who were there, the stakeholders who were there at Aba at Abia State for the meeting that confirmed Nenadi's led National Working Committee, they said that they casted a vote of no confidence in Abure. Hence why they went ahead to have that convention and then vote or have install this new National Working Committee. Afterwards, they put out a press release saying that they were extending an olive branch to other members to be unified under the umbrella that is Labour Party. What do you make of the vote of no confidence in Abure by the stakeholders, the installation of the National Working Committee, and the extension of that olive branch to Abure, plus the allegations of corruption and misappropriation of funds by Abure?
Thank you so much. I didn't say what I said to disparage the media. Of course, the media have been the conscience of every nation. But what I'm saying is that sometimes there are some information that goes on TV, on newspapers that are not verified. Most times people come and speak grammar and say what they want to say without concrete evidence. That's, by the way, I'm sorry if I make any statement that looks like I'm disparaging the media. I respect the media, of course. I've also benefited from them. So coming to your question, I think the first time Abure was given vote of no confidence was by Apapa. It didn't stand. Why? Because the constitutional provisions of the party were not followed. The second one was the formation of the National Transition Committee by NLC, which I told them in confidence that it will not work because the constitutional provision of the party and electoral act were not followed. The third vote of no confidence were given by the former treasurer, who was a treasurer for 13 years and never produced a statement of accounts or financial report. And now coming on air to accuse Abure, who became national chairman in 2021, and produce a financial report. So that vote of confidence also failed because it didn't follow the constitutional provision of the party and the constitutional provision of the land. Now, the Umuahia stakeholders meeting. Can you call a stakeholders meeting in a political party without the NWC members, even if it is half of them being in attendance? Then they extended a notice on social media, like you said, inviting 5 members of the NWC. I feel there are some level of cunningness in that. Because if you wanted to do something properly, you go ahead and invite the entire NWC members And there must have been some discussions internally before you go on such a vendetta in Omaya, as far as I'm concerned. So those consultations were not made. The allegations of corruption against Abure is an individual thing, but one thing I know is that there is no court in Nigeria that have found Abure wanting. Sometimes I ask questions, is Abure more powerful than people like Abelo that EFCC kept inviting? Is Abure more powerful than Tafa Balogun that the police dragged on the floor, even after being the Inspector General of Police? When the law have caught up with you, the law have caught up with you. So that is what I'm saying, that people must approach the court, people must approach everything they are saying with concrete evidence, not just grammar, like some of the content creators on social media are doing in recent times. Not just that. You must have a concrete evidence, and I'm talking with strength because I'm inside. If they call a meeting of NWC today, I will be there. That's the highest decision-making body of the party. So I'm telling you that there were no discussions. All what we had is that Abure should come to Umaya with 2 persons. And as a party, it would be wrong, Abure as a leader, to now come and tell the whole NWC, I'm going to Umaya with only 2 persons. It's wrong. So the approach, the whole conduct of things in Umaya was wrong. The strategy was wrong. The stakeholders of the party cannot be complete without the National Working Committee members of the party.
Kennedy.
Thank you.
Kennedy, can you also, since we're stating, you know, the mechanisms of all of this, whether the meetings or the stakeholder vote process, as well as, you know, the convention in Umuahia, INEC also did not see the Inewi convention that was held by Abure. It didn't see it as legal, right? So would you also say that the mechanism of having that convention was wrong? I'm only asking. This is in no way trying to stoke a fire.
It is not
Just
in
make
the
it
power,
clear for me.
It is not in the power of INEC to say that the convention that done by Labour Party is illegal. They don't have that power. INEC is an umpire, and as a matter of fact, the provisions of the Electoral Act and the Constitution of the land says that you should inform INEC. And even if you go down on that provision, he said that after informing INEC, whether they attend or they don't attend, the national chairman and national secretary shall make a report to INEC. And let me take us back to history. In 2018, when the tenure of the then NWC expired, INEC wrote an official letter to the party stating that there is an expiration of tenure of this current NWC and mandating the party to conduct another convention, which the party adhered to by conducting a convention in Akwanga, Nasarawa State in 2019. Now, this brings us back to 2024. Is INEC no longer the same INEC that wrote the party as at 2018? Have INEC changed from their name to another thing? So the question is, why haven't INEC, since they feel that they don't accept the convention of the party, why haven't they written the party saying that we don't accept your convention for so reason? So INEC does not have the power to say condemn the convention done by the party. Whatever the party does is a totally an internal party affairs. INEC can only attend primary where a candidate is produced, because a candidate once produced will affect policy, will impact the people. So INEC can only participate 100% in primary election. But in convention and congresses, INEC just needs notification, and the party did not default in that.
Mr. Hanotu, I'm still on the case of the leadership of the party and this announcement by the principals to actually perhaps maybe take this to court. Now, if Peter Obi, a very known principal of the party, has come in and stepped in and said he is going to be making this arrangement, does that mean that he can reshape the party leadership in any way, shape, or form? And how will this also affect the party dynamics?
Your Excellency, Mr. Peter Obi is well respected in the party till tomorrow. And I can assure you this, he is our leader. He's one of the strong leaders of the party as he stands today. And he never said, I didn't hear from him. I read his his press release where he said that we are going to reconcile. We are going to bring everybody together. That was what I heard from His Excellency, Mr. Peter Obi. Of course, many people can interpret what he said in a different manner. But if I understood our presidential candidate properly, he said, now the court judgment has come, we are going to further engage in reconciliatory measures, which I feel is the right thing for him to say. The expectation now is for him as a father to now call everybody on a round table. Like I said, what has been lacking in this whole thing is been calling everybody on the round table and putting the fact on the table and discussing it as a family. If there's an issue in a family, the best thing to do is to sit down, not to run around a particular matter, which is wrong. The best thing is for us to sit down, tell ourselves the truth. This is the current realities. This is the strategy we want to use to approach 2027. Some people, we need to concede, we need to do this, some people need to make sacrifices, some people need to shift grounds, and you state it factually like that. And you now look at leaders respond in terms of morality. You now look at leaders respond with the idea that we are pursuing the liberation of Nigeria. But we cannot achieve the liberation of Nigeria by demonizing some people and making some people saints. Even those people that you are making saints, some of us knows them as nothing close to being a saint. So the best thing is for us to come and sit down as a family and discuss and chat a way forward. Nobody have disagreed with His Excellency in this and resolution approach to what has just happened. I feel that what have happened to Labour Party is needed, at least to shake the foundation, to confirm if the party is actually strong, to confirm if the leadership of the party is not as feeble and soft as a lot of people thought. You know, some of us are young professionals. We are not former this, we are not former that. So based on that, they feel we don't have anything to offer. But it's unfortunate. I don't know where David trained before he defeated Goliath. This NWC can defeat any president, can win presidential election. Of course, we won it in 2023.
All right, Kennedy, speaking of elections, but first, when you say that, you know, they have to be compromised, they have to be people that would concede, it makes you wonder if there have been time and time again of vocal cases of vote of no confidence in the leadership of Abure. Are you saying that there have not been cases where all the chieftains and principals and the stakeholders of the party have come together to speak to him privately before coming to the media or letting it blow up to this manner? But that's just a rhetorical question. You don't have to answer. But moving forward, right, you just talked about elections. There is a governorship election underway, which is the Edo State election. There's also the local government council elections that are also ongoing. And from the last general election cycle, it was very, very clear that Labour Party was a prominent figure that rose out of, you know, obscurity, so to speak, and have now become so much of a large following that people love and wanted to see a difference from the last two popular party, which is the People's Democratic Party and the All Progressives Congress. With all that is going on, and with the Edo elections at stake, do you see your party finding a cohesive, united front to be able to campaign on the ground in Edo State and also be of a strong opposition for the sake of the Nigerian people?
I think the problem of leadership in Nigeria is followers find it difficult to follow their leaders. Followers find it that they are bigger than the people leading them. This is the crux of leadership problem in Nigeria. If you look at Edo, what happened in Edo is unfortunate. Labour Party had everything it would have taken them to win Edo. The crisis that befell the party before the Edo or within the primary election of the party in Edo was clearly uncalled for. The national chairman of the party is from Edo State. Of course, he said that there is a zoning arrangement in Edo State. That was his crime in Edo State. He said that he was suggesting that the party ticket be zoned to Central, and because he's also from Central. So a lot of things happened that didn't happen. Our candidate that emerged was actually the most vibrant, the most qualified to be the next governor of Edo State. But then just like it is the people that decide who leads them, and the people that decide who leads them are sometimes played by this sentiment of zoning. Of course, I don't blame the people who felt that an outgoing governor and the incoming governor cannot be from the same local government. That was what affected us in Edo State. Outside that, the party would have won the election in Edo State. Abata remains, and I would challenge anybody, the best candidate for that governorship election in Edo State. But then the zoning arrangement affected his election. That's by the way. And again, going forward, other elections, the party has a goodwill of the people. And eventually, it is these same people that we vote. But what we need is peace in the party. The moment we achieve that peace in the party, I think the party is good to go. It's all these things that are happening in the party. Of course, it's expected that a party that went through, that challenged the establishment in the last election, will go through this level of shaking. It's expected ordinarily because you can't challenge the status quo and not face some fractures. So a lot of people will be injured, a lot of people will be, we experience a negative effect of challenging the establishment in 2023 election. That is the crime that the party have committed. It's because we challenged the status quo in 2023. That is the crime we committed as a party.
Mr. Kennedy, I want to say thank you very much for joining us this morning to share your views on this LP issue. And of course, your views are noted. And well, what can I say? Thank you indeed. We appreciate this.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
And coming up next, well, we can't wait for sports this morning because Onyechi is looking brighter than the sunshine. And well, hey, what would we be if we don't let her?
Careful there, slow down,
Don't worry, her husband is my brother.
Okay. Very good.
Let's bring you guys sports here for Breakfast Extra.
Welcome back. You're still watching Breakfast Extra. Thank you so much, Maxino and Judith, for that compliment. Well, let's talk sports right now. Women's football takes center stage, where the Nigeria's under-17 women's national team, the Flamingos, led by head coach Bankole Olowokere, says his team is gearing up for the FIFA Under-17 Women's World Cup, and they are confident in their readiness despite that recent 1-1 draw with Mexico in a friendly match. Now, Faridat Abdulkarim gave Nigeria the lead in 33 minutes before the Mexican equalized in the 42nd minutes of the well-thought-out friendly, where both teams showed grit, but neither could find that winning goal. The Flamingos, a 21-player squad, will face Ecuador, New Zealand and host Dominican Republic in Group A of the tournament, which runs from October 16 to November 3, 2024 in the Dominican Republic. And coach Olowokere is assuring that his girls, they've got the capability to go ahead and then create some magic.
Mexico is just an outcome, and it touched to what we are expecting at the World Cup. It was a tough match and very tough. I mean, they are similar to our African kind of football, a bit robust. It's good. With that match, it's just preparing us ready. I mean, above half ready. That's just what I can say. So it's okay for us. It's fine for us. The inferiority complex has been taken away. A bit of fear has taken away. The only word that we're just waiting for how does it happen?
Still talking about Nigeria's youth team, we go to the boys. The Flying Eagles of Nigeria defeated the Grass Runners FC 2-1 in a friendly match that took place at the team's base in Ikenne. This is following preparations for that WAFU Beyond the 20 championship in Togo. So goals from Amole Bidemi, I beg your pardon, and Rislanu Ismail ensured that coach Aliyu Zubairu's side defeated Ikenne-based team on Saturday. Now, Flying Eagles were the 2023 FIFA Under-20 World Cup quarterfinalists and having the last phase of the preparation before departing for Lomé, where they tackled Burkina Faso and Côte d'Ivoire in a 3-team Group B encounter on a quest to defend the title that they won in Niger Republic 2 years ago. Now, to wrap up sports, we bring you some boxing action. Arthur Beterbiev, he defeated Dimitri Bivol by majority decision to become the undisputed light heavyweight world champion as one of the boxing's most anticipated fights lived up to the hype in Saudi Arabia. In a contest that could have gone either way, Bivol won either rounds with his superior movement and combinations. Of course, our fellow undefeated Russian Petroleum, he was undeterred and forced his way back into the fight with relentless pressure and power punching, with the scores going 114 to 114, 115 to 113, and finally 116 to 112. Petroleum becomes the division's first undisputed champion since 2002 and is the first ever in the four-belt era. Congratulations to Arthur Petroleum. He did say that, of course, 100% KO records. Oh, Judith, you never saw that coming at this time with the sport updates we've got for you.
No, I didn't. And I will be very honest. There are some things, that's the thing about sports, isn't it? About sports.
Yes, surprises come. But nobody ever thought that he would have that 100% record in the world of boxing. But in the lightweight division, I can say for sure, undisputed champion, Arthur Petroleum. We can't wait for the rematch against Bivol. But at this time, it is sport update. So Judith, back to you.
All right. You're still watching Breakfast Extra. Many thanks to Onyechi Obara there for the news, and congratulations to the champion of the world. We'll go on a short break. When we come back on the other side, it's going to be time for us to bring you the headlines. Stay here. And you're watching Breakfast Headlines on Breakfast Extra. I am Judith. TV at the top headlines at this hour. Presidential candidate of the Labour Party in 2023, Peter Obi, says it is extreme of President Bola Tinubu to allow an increase in the price of petrol while he's vacationing in comfort. Tinubu is currently on his annual vacation in Europe. In a post on X, Obi said he praised Tinubu acts in the best interest of the citizens before returning to the country because many Nigerians are living under unnecessarily precarious conditions. On October 9th, the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited increased the price of petrol across its retail outlets nationwide. In the meantime, President of the Nigerian Labour Congress, Joe Ajaero, says the recent petrol price hike is harmful to the 70,000 naira minimum wage recently approved for workers. In an interview with journalists, Ajaero said the organs of the Labour Union will meet next week to decide their line of action on the petrol price hike. Recall that in July, President Bola Tinubu signed the minimum wage bill, increasing the workers' pay package from 30,000 naira to 70,000 naira into law. The price of petrol was already 700 naira per litre when the minimum wage bill was signed into law. And away from that now, this time to war against corruption. In a related development, a whistleblowing coalition, the Coalition of Anti-Corruption Civil Society Organizations for Development, has raised an alarm over alleged misappropriation of funds ongoing in the nation's Ministry of Niger Delta Development. The group, while calling on the federal government and the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission to verify the claims, investigate the permanent secretary of the ministry, and bring to books those complicit in the allegations.
Amongst the countless infractions committed include non-execution/diversion of 30 million naira for medical outreach of staff of the Ministry of Niger Delta Development. It was not done. Non-execution/diversion of 21 million for skills development seminar in Akoko, Edo State. Non-execution/diversion of 19.3 million for skills development in Ilaje, local area of Ondo State. Diversion of 342 million for extra budgetary allocation proposed for rice palliatives. Misappropriations like diversion of 15 billion naira flood palliative for Niger Delta region. Most alarming recently is this diversion of 342 million for extra budgetary allocation proposed allegedly for rice palliative for Niger Delta. While there are no budgetary provisions for procurement of bags of rice, in the 2023 budget, we are aware that on the 22nd of May 2024, the Permanent Secretary gave instructions for 5 departments to raise a total sum of 342 million naira. The departments are Infrastructure Development, Economic and Empowerment Department, Community Development and Education Department, Urban and Housing Department, and Environment Management Department.
Drama has risen in Nigeria's National Petroleum Company Limited as some members of staff of the company accused the Chief Human Resources Executive of using a position to disobey a valid court order. Now, this is related to a leadership crisis within the Staff Multipurpose Cooperative Society, where the FCT High Court in Maitama, Abuja, sacked the executives of the society several years ago. The staff are accusing the HR executive of allowing her choice management committee to conduct an election of new executives into the society, a decision barred by the court in 2020.
Chief Human Resources Officer of the NNPC Limited, Fatima S. Nyakubu, has been using her privileged position to undermine the order of the court, undermine the authority of the court. Ordinarily, this person's restraint ordinarily would have been a bit what's called apprehensive of the consequences of the order. But this particular woman, using her privileged position, like I said, has been the one fueling everything. They have gone ahead to conduct this election. And this election of the management committee couldn't have been made possible except the woman, the head of human resources, Chief Human Resources Officer of the NNPC, Fatima S. Nyakubu, except it wouldn't be possible for the fact that she gave them the portal of NNPC Limited to use, to communicate, and then ensure that the election was held, and then electing new management committee of the cooperative, when the order of the court is still pending and subsisting. And now, even as lawyers, we also know that for the fact that a matter is pending in court, it is typically expressed as least pennies. That when a matter is pending in court, no party to the proceedings should do anything that will force a fait accompli. That's like making the order of the court that he would have made at the end of the matter nugatory.
And now to health matters. The International Red Cross, the Red Crescent Movement, the Norwegian Red Cross and the Nigerian Red Cross Society have tasked humanitarian service providers in the country to engage with the 36 state governments to ensure that they pay more attention to the outbreak of infectious diseases. Now, this was during a capacity-building training of health professionals in Abuja on mpox surveillance, case management, infection prevention and control, as well as risks, communication and community engagement.
We can draw the attention of government in one manner or the other to ensure that government is able to respond the way we are supposed to do. Where we are now, the situation, like we have had some experiences with Ebola, Lassa fever, and some other pandemics, we are now seeing from scientific reports that most of these diseases are now manipulating their existence to give us another face which has to be addressed. And so we need, all of us there, to be innovative.
COVID started some time ago. At some point, we thought it was going away. It was already gone, maybe. But we realized that the strains started changing, metamorphosing into different level, and it became a bit deadly and more difficult to contain. I hope we will not actually go into that kind of situation. We will not reach that kind of situation. We need to scale up.
And those are the major headlines at this hour. It's back to Breakfast Extra here on News Central TV. I am Judith TV. Stay here.
Welcome inside the 10 o'clock hour for Breakfast Extra, and welcome to Africa Focus, or rather Focus Africa. Now we deep dive into stories and issues shaping the continent, not just Nigeria, and today we examine a critical topic with far-reaching implications across Africa, the ongoing crisis in the Middle East and its impact on Africa's oil prices. Now, with tensions rising in one of the world's most volatile regions, African nations, many of which are heavily dependent on oil exportations, are already feeling the ripple effects.
So to understand or better understand the ripple effects, the security dynamics, and their economic impact, we're joined by a special guest today. It's Confidence Makari, Senior Security Analyst at SBM Intelligence. He's going to bring us some very expert insight on how this conflict is affecting, oil production and pricing across the continent. But first of all, can I say happy birthday again?
Thank you.
Happy
birthday. It's your birthday. Since the topic has been raised, how old are you? I'm sorry.
Just don't, a year older. How about that? Well, let's set the stage, shall we? Can you give us a brief overview of the current situation in the Middle East and just the impact on oil prices globally, specifically for Africa?
All right. So a year ago, we were looking at the prospect of war. People were hoping for a limited war. The people who supported the war, especially Israel, they were hoping for a limited war. But one thing students of international politics will tell you is that a limited war hardly stays limited. So right now, a year later, we're looking at not just war. We are stuck in between war or more war. So people are trying to scramble to get used to one of the two facts which they are much more comfortable with. But what we've seen so far is that given how interconnected the Middle East geography is with continents as their neighbors, the problems are still local. The Middle East is bordered by Africa to the south, and it's also bordered to Europe on one particular hand. So while the Europeans are feeling it, the Africans are also feeling it. So usually in the past, let's say if this was happening in 1973, when the Yom Kippur War happened in October, you'd be having African countries, especially people within OPEC, oil producers, being happy that prices are going to go up. I mean, coincidentally, when the Yom Kippur War happened in October 1973, Nigeria benefited largely from the oil boom. It was part of these things that set up the chain of infrastructural developments the Gowon administration used.
Yes.
But if you fast forward 50 years down the line, things have largely changed. So each time there is a problem in the Middle East, Nigeria always feels very nervy, like we are not going to benefit from this. And the reason is due to the fact that we don't produce as much oil as we do, and most of our production is already accounted for. And unlike in the past where we had fuel subsidies that will be able to insulate the average person from the price, we no longer have that. So whenever there is an oil price shock, the next person on the streets is going to feel it. So that's the current situation we're having at the moment.
Now, this is based on the fact that Nigeria at the time could export oil. And then also apply that to subsidy, and you and I wouldn't get to feel it. Now I get it.
Right. So African nations like Nigeria, like you said, we, especially Libya, for example, there are major oil exporters. There's also Angola, there's Nigeria. Can you explain how volatile the volatility in the Middle East and how it's influencing their oil revenue and what this means for their economics as well?
All right, so for the Middle East, there are people that are going to benefit from this thing. I think Saudi Arabia, being a leader of the OPEC cartel, stands well to benefit. But where Saudi Arabia's benefits end is in trying to export oil through the Gulf, especially along those routes where you have the Houthi rebels on one hand trying to control the area, and then you have the Persian Gulf where a problem in Iran is going to set off problems in the Persian Gulf, where you expect that the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps is going to be causing problems for shipping around there. So what some countries who expect this did was they tried to preempt this. So I think, was it in March last year that China called Iran and Saudi Arabia to a room and told them, cut the shit. The two of them, they've been at loggerheads for, I think, for about a decade. I think one of the things I remember that stood out was in 2015 when a Shia-aligned cleric in Saudi Arabia was beheaded by Saudi Arabia, and Iran didn't like it, so two of them broke off diplomatic relations. And apart from that, in 2019, Iran backed Houthi rebels in Yemen, fired off missiles into Saudi Arabia, and then caused problems for Saudi Aramco. So China preempted this and then called two of them to the room and said, you guys do not need to be fighting, I need oil. And so they were able to normalize relations. So that is where the problem stops. It doesn't necessarily mean that getting two of them to your room has solved the problem. China is also still wary. But for many of all these other countries, between the Middle East and North Africa, there is one major way by which they would export oil, whether to Europe or the Far East, and that's through the Mediterranean. So you're passing through the Gulf of Aden, you're passing through the Eastern Mediterranean, you're passing through the Red Sea, and all of these places have choke points. I just talked about Iran, how it's going to affect these things. You also talked about the Houthis in Yemen and how they've been disturbing shipping ever since October 7 attacks and so many things. So in whichever way you look at it, it doesn't really look good for the continent, the countries in the continent around where this problem is. But if you look at people who are producing oil far away from this place, let me say Guyana, for instance, where oil was found, and then it led to a problem between Venezuela and the regional economies. This is a good bone. But the ability to get their oil production up to meet standards that are enough for them to export in large quantity is light years away.
Right.
So, but for the remainder of the current period, we're having many other countries that depend on the Middle East and North Africa are always going to be nervy when these developments happen.
Wow.
Confidence. Now, let me, for the sake of our viewers, I'm going to need these next questions answered in layman's terms as much as possible, because you've got so many words here. First of all, we're talking about crude now, not refined product. We're talking about crude. And we're noting that it's not just the many factors that's affecting trade, that's affecting prices. And one of the biggest ones which we are noting now is logistics. Moving through certain places that have trade policies and all of that, or maybe even insecurity, like what we're experiencing now in the Middle East. Am I correct?
Yeah, true.
So, in a roundabout way, the instance with Libya and Muammar Gaddafi being thrown out of power, how did that affect the Nigerian oil exports or earnings?
Yeah, so there's not a direct link between the crisis in Libya, especially in terms of security perspective with the oil thing. I'll try to take both apart in different ways. So there is a way Libya affected Nigeria, and that is through the arms flow from the Sahel. You do know that if you look at Nigeria's external map, Libya is just 2 border crossings away. True. So if you go to Nigeria's northeast, you have Chad, and then once you cross Chad, you get into Libya. So the arms flow, they were coming from the Libyan crisis, were flowing through to Chad, and they were making their way down to Nigeria. So one thing that he did was he created a whole new network of arms producers in the country. So if you check many of the press statements from the Nigerian military, especially in the southeast, around that southeast Cameroon corridor, you have a lot of local arms manufacturers. From the northeast, southeast Cameroon corridor.
Manufacturers.
Yes, local manufacturers
and so
in Nigeria.
That means that the conflict in the middle is, to an extent, affects security levels in Africa.
Yeah, it always does, because there is a shipment of arms, and then there's the other way that it does, in the sense that many of all these jihadist groups that are in the Sahel tend to align with the Palestinian cause. So there is going to be pressure, especially for governments that are seen as too friendly to the West. So governments in the Sahel are in trouble. Or if this was 2 years ago, they would have been in trouble. But with the rise of, should I say, anti-Western revolutionary government in terms of military coup in, say, Niger, Benin, and they've been a little bit insulated, from there. And so you have, for much of what we've seen on the continent since October 7 attacks, you've seen even people, even governments that are quite aligned with the West or with Israel, have tended to take the back step. I'm talking about Kenya and the like. So many of these other governments have not really been taken, but it hasn't really stopped the terrorists, So it has formed a little bit of a recruitment tool and more of attacks on. And if you check many Western consulates and embassies in the Sahel, they've upped their security threat and their security level. But to answer that question as to how this affects the oil prices and the oil industry in Nigeria, Libya doesn't really have that outsized effect. I would think that Nigeria's problems are largely self-inflicted.
Well, I'm thinking about it in terms of the demand or the supply. Libya was big on oil. It was also it was exporting oil as well.
They were
now,
exporting.
with the unrest, how did that affect Nigerian export at the time? Did it make it? Did it increase it? Did it increase the price per barrel? What effect? What commercial effect did it have on the price of oil for Nigeria? Did we gain or did we lose from that?
So we haven't really gained from an oil boom, especially when it comes to crisis in international markets, since 2014. And that's
since 2014.
Since 2014, we haven't really gained. And that is when, if you cast your mind back to the problems the United administration was having due to its, as regards its 2015 budget thing, it was that it couldn't really get the oil benchmark to match what is stated locally and what is stated internationally. So you have a whole decade that we haven't really benefited, and the problem has largely remained the same. I was saying to Judith earlier that one of our problems is production. You have crisis in the oil-producing areas where even there is an uneasy piece, it's still holding. It doesn't necessarily mean that fuel theft, or oil theft rather, has stopped. You just simply have government officials simply looking the other way. And despite lip services to improving the conditions, it hasn't really stopped, because if they know if they go too hard on the oil thieves, it's going to cause a problem. It's going to, militancy is going to be back. So the little that we're able to produce, when at the height when we were producing up to 2.13 million barrels in 2014, we are now struggling to produce 1.4, 1.5. So, and most of the things we have been producing, it has already been insured. So as of 2020, India used to be our largest oil import. Now it no longer is. They've been looking for alternative design. As of last year, people were not even buying our oil. Our oil was stuck on many seas. Understand? So we've been having that problem because, number one, we're not reliable. and we don't produce enough. And many of the things we already produce, we use to get loans. So I think some of our oil were tied to Goldman Sachs and so many other things. So they were already hedged. Thank you for that word. So nobody really trusts Nigeria again. I would also give you an example. When Russia invaded Ukraine, the European Union needed places to get alternative energy supplies. They came to Africa. I think Olaf Scholz visited some countries. He skipped Nigeria. We've already been talking about the Trans-Saharan pipeline, which is supposed to run from Nigeria through Niger, through Algeria to the Mediterranean. But everybody knows that it's not going to work because the security infrastructure that you need to allow that kind of a pipeline to run is simply not existing. And then you have an unfriendly regime in the other part. So the other necessary, or the other logical way to export this oil is through the sea, which is going to incur more time, incur more cost, and then that place is also not safe. So we haven't really done our homework in a manner of speaking.
We've been talking exports and we've been putting Nigeria in the center. Let's widen our scope now and talk about the entirety of Africa. Most African countries rely on imports for their domestic needs when it comes to energy, whether it's petrol, whether it's cooking gas. We rely heavily on domestic, on our oil imports. How does those imports influence the price for African consumers, giving the Middle East into play, putting the Middle East into play?
These prices, I wouldn't say a lot of them accounted for it. A lot of these governments, they didn't really account for it. So many of these governments are not really that, they're not really that immune. Ghana is one of such countries. We don't really have refineries on the continent. So if you have logistical issues, let's say for instance, if you remember the Suez Canal crisis, not the one of 1956, I'm talking about the one that happened about 2 or 3 years ago, we saw inflation go up because that place is a choke point. Close to about 10-15% of the world's goods pass there. So that insularity is just an example of how, sorry, it's not really insularity as a word. That's susceptibility to shock. It's just an example of how many of these things, many of these countries not being able to prepare for these things are finally are receiving the shocks. And as I was trying to say earlier, not many of these countries have refineries. So many of them get imported refined, they sell out crude, and then they get refined fuel. So given that kind of scenario, similar to what Nigeria is facing, of course, many of them are going to be facing the same thing. So you have Ghana on one hand, you have Nigeria on one hand, you have many other countries, especially along the Sahel and Sahara belts, facing the same thing. I would think that one other country that should be a little bit immune from this shock should be Gabon, because they have significant refining capacity that will limit a little bit of local demand.
Let's talk about the Israel-Hamas war, right? The conflict. And I'm looking at the chat. I'm just taking a look at it. They're going to pull it up on the screen there. And we see it spike, especially the red line there, spike especially high at an inflation of about 35%. And we see it coming down a bit, but it's still very, very high as of November 2023. Talk to me about that, just that chat, looking at it.
So you have a situation where at the start of the crisis, people were really jittery, and many of the concerns for the oil industry was, should I say, a little bit over the top. But over the past year, I think they've relatively stabilized. Well, I would say that people's demand and consumption have quite gotten used to it. So that alarm hasn't really been that.
So that, you know how it gets a balloon and then it bursts and everyone just, there's a normal.
But with the current iteration of the violence, with it threatening to expand into a wider Middle East war involving direct exchange between Iran and Israel, I would think that we might actually be back there where we were at the start of the conflict in the next few weeks, especially if this fear is actually materialized.
Wow. And if that happens, what are we looking at in terms of crude prices, importation of prices, and even just the price for the regular
local man?
Yeah. You expect it to go up. As I've said earlier, the shock absorbers that we usually have when you have an NPC doing much of the bulk of the heavy lifting is all gone. It's all gone. So you're exposed, directly to the issues. And from a geopolitical standpoint, yes, the economists are going to be looking at how this is going to affect them economically. But from a security standpoint, also from a geopolitical standpoint, it doesn't really inspire much hope. And one would actually be hoping, especially if you're in this part of the world, one would actually be hoping that Israel does not follow through on its intents to strike Iran directly, which of course is
confidence. I don't know how confident I am after bringing you on the show here today.
I would think that it's really inevitable. I think many countries in the EU and also in the United States will be preparing for it. I don't think that any person that wins the November election in the US, for instance, is going to actually restrain Israel from striking Iran. It's a procedure. Given that they haven't really stopped their arms shipments to Israel, despite some EU countries promising to do so, you kind of know that it is a scenario they have planned for, just like friendly governments to the West are prepared for a potential Trump return to the White House. So these are scenarios they are planning for. So we cannot sit here, especially in this part of the world, and say, please, Israel, do not strike Iran. It's going to happen. So you just have to get on with the program. And just get on
confidence.
with the
I want to say thank you very much for that masterclass in the economics of war as it relates to fuel prices in Africa.
And also the proliferation of small arms with this conflicts that we see in the Middle East as well.
The dynamic is crazy. You wouldn't expect that it's related. But thank you very much, birthday boy, for coming over on your birthday on a Sunday morning.
Thank you. No problem. Thank you for having me.
Now do stay tuned. We've got one more segment coming your way, and it's going to be Wellness Central, if I'm not mistaken. So this one's going to interest you. Do stay tuned.
And good morning again and welcome. It's time for us to dish you our extra special for today. Extra special / Wellness Central. Now, today we mark a very significant day, World Mental Health Day 2025. And this year's theme is mental health at work. With growing awareness around mental health well-being or mental well-being, it's clear that workplaces play a huge role in our overall mental health. How can we create environments that prioritize mental wellness? How can employers support their teams in meaningful ways? To help us explore these critical issues, we have two special guests joining us today.
Yes, indeed, joining us today. First off, Tumishe Kuku. She's been on the show before, and now she's a friend of the house. She's a passionate mental health advocate who has been instrumental in raising awareness about mental health challenges in the workplace. And we also have joining us Eniola Bello, the founder of Minds Place, that's Minds Place, a leading provider of comprehensive mental health services dedicated to fostering well-being and connecting individuals with professional support. You're welcome, ladies. Good to have you here. I'm going to go right straight into it so that we have plenty of time now. How exactly impactful, what are the impacts of one's workplace on their mental health? Let me start with you, Eniola. And say it loud so that HR can hear.
So first of all, I would say that having an open conversation within the workplace is quite important. And then building the policies, the system within the organization that fosters communication, that fosters collective support, ensuring that the support system within the workplace is safe for employees to speak out once they're having issues, once they're having challenges, and ensuring that the managers, from top down, are involved in conversations that have to do with mental health.
Very interesting. And then I'm going to bring the generational divide or dynamics into it. I'm going to come to you, Tumishe. You and I are dinosaurs in this.
I beg, let's I want to make time slow down. But is there any chance he gets to show his age? Or you want to show it?
When it comes to mental health, it's a conversation that's mostly talked about now by a different generation, the one after ours. How does that show the difference with which we, or the difference in how we address these mental health challenges? Going through the gradient of the generations.
Okay, so I'm going to use myself as an example, and of course where you and I used to work, you know. And yes, it was not spoken about, but I could take my children to work. I could take my children to work. So my daughter will be beside me, and there's a creche that opened at 8, and then the nannies will come take the child, and it fed my value to be available to my children. So maybe they weren't talking about it, but they did something about it.
Somehow.
That for me personally fed me, and it closed my eyes to the toxicity that was in there, because I was there for my family, and that was okay for me. So generationally, of course, there's these children, I hear it all the time, these children are always talking about protecting mental health, you know. And that is no fault of theirs, because they weren't raised that way anyways. They were raised to be, their type of resilience is long-suffering, I think, rather than, you know, is long-suffering. So they don't understand that taking breaks, being able to serve yourself, being able to speak to the overcrowded thoughts, or overcrowding thought is a thing, and that's the way to build resilience. For them, you have to go through to build resilience. So I think that's where
the difference,
the difference is.
I'm so glad we're having this conversation about generations, because I always find it weird. I wouldn't say funny, but weird when people call out the Gen Zers for always saying, I'm going to protect my mental health. And
There's
so
a collective nodding of head.
I always find it weird, because it's like, you understand it's a younger generation who's never been at a capitalist, you know, working environment as toxic as because the thing about the older generation, and that is the baby boomers and the Gen Xers, is that they expect you to go above and beyond. And the Gen Zs are just coming as like, is this please, that's not also, we're leaving, you know. And it's hard for them and those who are at the managerial level to understand. They would rather be home, chilling, because they know that there are so many options available to them to survive in this capitalist world that we live in than to slave for the man. And so I find it very, very interesting when people always call out them. It's interesting.
Okay,
you can say.
Eniola, so noting this now, how does this play when it comes from the employer to the employee? How should this play? What should be considered as an employer?
Okay, so as an employer, it's what I advise, because my background is also HR, so I can speak from that point, right? Is to understand and be flexible. Flexibility is what the world should be. So once you understand the generation that occupy your organization, you should tailor your policies, your processes to fit them. So take, for instance, before COVID, some organization had bought into the flexible working method, but COVID situation enforced it, especially for the baby boomers that didn't accept such processes. You understand? So you have to be more flexible. What kind of work method do they want? They want to work from home. They want the flexible laptops, not the desktop, things like that. Make them feel like it is not work they are doing. Make work feel enjoyable for them. And trust me, once you are flexible enough to get the best out of them, rather than them frustrated about being at work, help them to thrive at work. You will get the best of them, and the productivity increases for them.
Mental health is often stigmatized, right? And those who are the home of affairs, especially in the workplace, where people may feel pressure to always be strong and productive, and when you're not, it's like, this person is not a serious person, you don't want to be a joker, you know. And so with that, what are some practical steps that you'd advise, you know, especially for those, not on the managerial side now, but for those who are employees who are coming in, who cannot continue? What would be some practical steps you would advise them? I know.
Okay, so, at the risk of sounding like a beeping flip, yourself first. There's if you understand yourself, there's nothing any toxic manager is bringing to you that you would not be able to create healthy boundaries around, right? People think when you talk boundaries, you're talking anger, you're talking hatred. No.
Timishi, I'm so glad you're saying this, because a lot of people think that boundaries meaning that you're stubborn or that
Well, boundaries. So what mental health is okay. What I'm protecting my mental health is okay. I understand when I'm high. I understand when I'm low. I have found an equilibrium for myself. I don't want you coming to disrupt that. Because if you disrupt that, I won't give my best. Is that what you want? That's boundary.
Right.
That's all it is.
Right.
So it's how we communicate.
They'd be like, oh, who does she think she is? Who does he think he is?
But it goes the way you communicate it too. You understand? And understanding yourself, putting yourself in a place that, I understand what you're trying to say, boss. But right now, if you want me to give, again, it goes back to generations that Mazzino spoke about. The generation ahead of us don't want to be spoken with. And when we're speaking with them, they take it as being spoken to.
I've got to compute that for a second.
Okay, compute it.
To
say that again for those at the back.
Okay.
Yeah, so they think we're speaking to them.
Yes.
They think we're speaking to them. I have two
I think
genders,
because
and I know what it means.
It's not expected for you to be vocal.
Vocal.
No.
Exactly.
So expected for you to be vocal.
It goes back to culture. Yeah. So it goes back to culture. So do we give them grace as employees? That, okay, this person doesn't understand. This person was brought up in another generation different to mine. And because I understand this person is not, I'm not going to take whatever he's doing to me personally.
There you go. I think you just hit it out. Because I was going to ask Eniola here how Mindspace works with different companies to actually help with this language difference, because that's where I see it.
And it challenges really,
It's more of education and awareness, so that's what we do. We try as much as possible to sensitize people, to sensitize organizations, to sensitize leadership, most especially because they are the decision makers. They are the enforcers of all these policies and everything that needs to help the employees to grow and thrive within the organization. So we always provide, so take for instance, we help them with the policies, the procedures that they need to put in place, like the health care. Do they have HMOs that provide EAP to the employees? And depending on the staff strength of the organization, do you need an occupational therapist in the workforce? So we help them tailor what exactly suits the kind of workplace they have.
Do you advise that should be mandatory?
Yes, it should. It should. It should.
How does this help? Is it a case where if I'm feeling overwhelmed, I can simply walk into that office and express myself?
Absolutely. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, you can walk into, take for instance, the therapist office, or if your superior is being overly demanding, that person could act as a mediator between the two of you.
Because I was going to ask how that's going to affect my KPI, because this is my
It wouldn't. So it's like
superior.
meeting halfway, the equilibrium. Exactly. To say, okay, you know what? This is the target that I've been set by my superior. This is how long it will take. Where can we meet? How can we meet? Do I need to shed the workload with someone else? So it's just finding ways at which productivity can enhance within the workplace.
Interesting.
Judith, say what you want to say.
Well, Tumisha is going to get me into trouble.
No, I don't worry.
Mental health at work, that is the theme, right? Prioritizing mental health in the workplace. Do you see in the next 5 years a situation where the most strongest, or should I even say a government institution, for example, say a commission for environment for Lagos State or any state, do you see a situation, a scenario where mental health is prioritized so much so that an occupational therapist is hired?
It's already happening,
Yes,
though.
it's happening.
Lagos State government actually has, at Adeyemi Bureau, you can go to Adeyemi Bureau or as a staff and go speak to mental health.
Private institution.
I know some private institutions that in their HMO, they have collaborated with some help people like Mindplace, and they are working. But here's the question. The greatest question we need to answer here is the employer. Does he understand or is just doing because
it is expected.
It is expected to be done. Are we also fixing the employer? Because here's what is causing us sing is the employer is like, I did it, I gave it. Why can't you give it?
It's a generation difference.
But here's the question. He is also dealing with the trauma that work had cost for
abusers
him.
create abusers.
Yes, you understand. So he's not. But so let me tell you, employers, that you are doing the same thing that I did to you, and it works does not mean you are better.
I want to say something, and I want to say something to everybody who's a dinosaur in the industry. The reason why we think the next generation can't handle it is because we're actually dealing with the trauma.
Yeah.
And that just clicked right now.
Yeah.
Apologies to any subordinate I've ever had.
I was somewhere yesterday, and I was at a radio station yesterday, and I asked them, so how is your shifts now? They said 4 hours, 6 hours. It's like, good, it's getting better. And she's like, yeah, that's true. I said, yeah, I used to do 8 hours.
8 hours.
I would do 8 hours straight. I would do midnight shift pregnant. As a matter of fact, with my son, I finished the show, drove myself to the hospital, and had a child.
Another one.
It's not. No, I'm not strong. It's not healthy.
No, it's not.
It's not healthy.
It's not.
Because you are telling that person that they didn't have a space to be, and how would they give their best if they're not being?
Tumishe, I'm so glad you're saying this, because I have to come to you and ask you, right, Eniola, in your line of work, in seeing stories like this, I can't even share my own. Is it in line of work and just seeing this, what are the huge challenges in trying to talk to the employers to be able to create an environment that takes into cognizance the employee's mental health? What are those challenges that you face?
Major challenge that comes forefront is finances. And what will be the return on investment?
Because it's not tangible, is it?
Exactly. So, and unfortunately, we don't have, it's not tangible, like you said, and we don't have experts that can make a proper business case to the employer. However, organizations like ours are able to. There are ways that you can test the pulse of employees to see what exactly is their well-being within the space. You can have maybe, sometimes what we advise them is to get external persons to come check the pulse, or even the HR can do like an anonymous surveys for the employees. However, some employees are scared to say the truth.
They'll be like,
well, because...
So it then boils down to the employer themselves. So I've had a case where the employer had to come have like a town hall meeting and share his own story in order for people to come out.
Well, now that we're here, there's one culture that is so rife and rampant in every workplace, and that is the baptismal of fire that they like to get the newcomers to go through. Please, can we just talk? It's not fair.
I'm sorry, what's wrong with that?
Mizzino.
And I'm saying this to actually share an opinion, to share an opinion by a group of people, which is that's what actually makes you stronger. That's what actually puts you through the fire.
But the evils of that is...
And I'm expecting to be corrected. So please go ahead.
I don't have a problem with it, actually.
You don't have a problem?
Let me explain.
Oh, sorry. That's
I don't have a problem because life cannot be cloudy, you know. But I have a problem with how it is done.
Okay.
I have a problem with how it's done. You don't say you want to. Baptism of fire, the person that is supposed to relieve you, everybody else knows that the person is not coming, just you.
Yeah, and they throw you to the deep end. That is throwing you to the deep end,
That is not fair.
That's because this is Sparta.
That is throwing you to the deep end, though. Now, that's what I'm telling you is that they intentionally choose to be mean and choose to make you cry
No,
Come on
that's
now.
hazing.
And then you are
That's bullying as well within the workplace.
That's hazing. But
and then they call it baptismal of fire.
No, that's a different thing, Judith. I think that's hazing. Like
That's that's
very
hazing.
different.
But if it is the fact that this person has been training for a bit, and you think it's time for you to allow the person some space and test it, I don't have a problem with
throw
that.
into deep
But
end and see how they swim.
If it is, and then be there as a supervisor when they're swimming, and
just cover around.
Just cover. But when it is intentional, as you said, it's demeaning. It breaks the person's self-esteem, and that takes a lot of work to get back. That is a lot of work to get back, and then we all start wearing masks, and then
look, we're out of time. All right, this is this. I look forward to this conversation from the beginning to the end. I'm so glad we had it.
We must have a bigger conversation on this.
Eniola Bello, founder of Minds Place, and of course, a mental health advocate and a friend of the house, Tumishe Kuku, both of them. Ladies, thank you. You guys have been sublime. So what a way to wrap up the show for this morning. It's been back-to-back of the very best for you for Breakfast Extra. But here's where we close the curtain and tie this weekend's installment of the show with a nice little bow on top.
I want to say thank you to everybody who joined us from yesterday up until today. Of course, we'll be back on your screens during the week, but most definitely together next week, Saturday, for another edition of Breakfast Extra. Until then, it's us saying goodbye. Have a great week ahead of you, and make sure you keep it here on News Central.
And for those who are just working, happy weekend. Happy weekend I've just started.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye for now.